Hey everyone, welcome back to Get NIST, the series that breaks compliance out of the checkbox trap and turns it into a real security advantage. No fluff, no FUD, just practical strategies to make compliance work for your MSP. I'm Jared Kasner. This week in your feed is a talk that I gave at ChannelCon 2026 about managing open source risk. Now, there are slides that went along with this. Those slides did not get caught in the video, no big deal. In the show notes will be a link. It's just blacksmithinfosec.com/ChannelCon. Has slides and a whole bunch of other goodies that we gave away as part of this talk. So without further ado, let me cut it over to the talk. An amateur in middle school, high school, and beyond. So I've seen a lot, I've done a lot, and I have some of the battle scars to prove it, and so we'll talk about that a little bit along the way here. Why are we talking about open source today? There's probably a lot of you who have been through some of the fun, exciting stuff that's happened in open source this year with Axios hack and things like that. There are the supply chain injection issues that we've had. But I just ask by show of hands, how many people are vibe coding today?
I hate the term.
How many of you are using AI to develop software today? How many of you are doing any sort of software development for the first time in a very long time because you were not writing software before that, right? I see far fewer hands than I would actually believe are doing something with AI right now. And the reality is, those AI coding agents, whether it's vibe coding or however you want to call it, actually, thank you for correcting me. But as you're developing software, you are almost certainly injecting open source dependencies into your software, whether you know it or not, and whether you're actually evaluating the risk that goes along with that or not. But on top of that, your vendors are using open source tools, whether you know it or not. You're all using open source software every day. I guarantee you, every one of you has at least one Linux box somewhere, open source. You're all using Chrome or some Chromium derivative, open source. Right? There's open source everywhere in your life, whether you know it or not, or whether you're paying attention to it or not. And so you need to think about how to evaluate that. And so, quick agenda for today. We're going to talk about how to evaluate commercial software versus open source software. We're going to talk about the current risk landscape. We're going to go through just a simple open source risk assessment framework that I've ChatGPT helped me with, so credit where it's due. At the end, I've got some giveaways for you. Cool. So, commercial versus open source. When you're doing commercial software, you've got a vendor you can go poke at. You can ask for a SOC 2 or ISO attestation. You can ask for pen test results. You can go through security questionnaires. Are any of you actually doing that with any of your vendors right now? 3 hands, perfect. Everybody's, but I guarantee you all of you are telling your clients to do this sort of evaluation of their vendors, right? Yes?
Yes.
Please? All right, so you should be evaluating your vendors the same way you are advising your clients to evaluate their vendors, asking for these types of things, put the vendors on the showroom floor through their paces. John Harden and the SaaS Council published a report, so if you haven't seen the SaaS checklist for what you should be asking of your vendors, please go take a look at that. There are some great things that you should be doing from a third-party risk management standpoint for your commercial vendors. Read the contracts. How many of you read a contract before you sign up with a software vendor? The one lawyer in the room, of course, yes. We got a handful of others that are doing it great, but please read your contracts. Commercial vendors would love you to believe their MSAs are immutable. You can get red lines into MSAs and having conversations with your vendors. Great way to go. And yeah, and then you got to support contracts. Versus open source, there's no salesperson, there's no security questionnaire, there's no account manager, there's no warranty. There might not even be a company associated with the open source package that you're talking about, right? Red Hat for Linux, but that's based on the free stuff. It doesn't have a corporation behind it, right? So there are ways that you can get the corporate version of open source, but also the totally free, out in the wild, no company behind it. And so thinking about that risk just needs to be thought about a little differently. It's not less secure, it's just a different process for thinking about the risk. So, we talked a little bit about the things that you already should be doing with your vendors as you're thinking about risk. All the slides will be available at the end, so you can take pictures all you want, please do, but all the slides are going to be, there's a QR code at the end. They are not gated behind any kind of paywall or anything like that, like if we were giving slides away. How many of you, as you're building laptops for your customers, include some sort of bill of materials for the hardware? Nobody? There. Okay. There's some hands. Right. You're all doing bills of materials for your hardware. Are you asking your vendors about the bill of materials for their software? Are you tracking the risks associated with the software that is it version specific? Is it something is it an agent that's being deployed on your machines or software that you're deploying yourself that you need to actually be thinking about what those components are and monitoring yourself? If it's SaaS, you're probably not getting that SBOM. If it's something that you're deploying on your environments, you probably need to be thinking about that software bill of materials along the way. All right, so let's talk about some myths here. Commercial software is safe. 100% of the time, right? Every commercial application out there, no CVEs, no CVSS scores that come out of that, right? Anybody running Enable? Like, look, we all have bad days sometimes, right? Like, and I'm not trying to throw shade at Enable. Every vendor in this room has had some sort of security incident, whether they choose to admit it or not. I give Enable a ton of props for the way they managed that situation over the weekend. For those of you not aware, there was a security incident. They were very proactive about getting in front of their customers, having people take things offline, getting it patched out very quickly over the weekend, working with the community to get that message and amplify that message, including GTIA's ISAL and getting that out the door as quickly as possible to make sure that come Monday morning, there were not a whole lot of people having really, really bad days. It was a lot more. So I give Enable a ton of credit for the way they managed that situation. But the reality is, commercial software is not always safe. Who thinks the contract that you are signing is there to protect you as the consumer of that software?
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100% of the time, right? All the indemnification clauses, things like no, it's to protect the vendor, right? So like we all sign these contracts thinking it's going to protect us and it's giving us all these power, but that's not the case, right? So I understand the arguments for commercial is better, and there are reasons to believe that is true, right? The flip side, I know Tom Lawrence likes to talk about how open source is always safer, inherently safer because it is, you got more eyes on it and it's always true, right? Slayla and I were talking about this last night, many bourbons deep, so I'll paraphrase the conversation. But you know, more eyes can mean safer when it's a very popular package, but when it's not that popular, you're getting fewer eyes on it. And there's some very, I'll call them unpopular, we'll talk about this a little later, some unpopular things that are popping up a lot of the internet. Open source is cheaper. How many of you have tried to deploy open source software in your own environment, now all of a sudden you're maintaining the hardware to run it and thinking about scalability and all the, right? So it's one of those things where, yes, it is free to buy the software, oftentimes, but now you're having to maintain it yourself and maintain the servers yourself and maintain the uptime. So there are costs associated with it. So you really do have to evaluate the cost as you're thinking about this. Cool. So again, we talked about this already. Open source is already part of your stack, whether you know it or not. It can be reviewed. It just needs to be reviewed a little bit differently. So let's talk about that risk landscape. Hopefully everybody has seen this cartoon before. Yes? Does anybody remember any of these open source vulnerabilities?
Yep.
Yeah. Definitely some people who are too young to remember Heartbleed and Shell Shock. There are also those of us who remember things going way back. I think one of the fun things, there was the plot fable, hey, it's too dangerous to release to the world because it found a vulnerability that's 25 years old and OpenBSD. Heartbleed, that was a 25-year-old bug that was found. Not by AI, this is pre-AI, right? So these 25-year-old bugs exist in the open source packages that we're using every day. Sometimes they're going to be found by security researchers, sometimes it's going to be by AI. We might be finding them faster because of AI, but the reality is Heartbleed and Shell Shock, those are 25-year-old bugs in OpenSSH. Yes?
The Screen Connect one was a 25-year-old bug.
Screen Connector is a 25-year-old bug? Yeah, there you go.
Like it was commit one. That code was in commit one.
Perfect, yeah. Commit. So thank you, Jason. The Screen Connect bug was 25-year-old bug that was in the first commit, right? LeftPad, this is a fun one. Anybody remember LeftPad? You know, one person who probably was developing in JavaScript, like 12 years ago, 10 years ago when LeftPad happened. LeftPad is a fun one. This one was an open source maintainer who got upset with the Node package manager, the JavaScript package library. Yanked their 11 lines of JavaScript package out of the JavaScript ecosystem. Every other tool, every other open source project, and there were thousands of them that depended on this project, all of a sudden went dark, right? You couldn't install a new version of it because the package that it relied on was gone. So there are risks associated with open source that aren't just because of malicious software or because of bugs in the code, but because of just angry people that have the keys to the kingdom and can pull their stuff off. You mentioned you remember Log4Shell. Anybody want to talk about Log4Shell? So I'm not the only one just droning on up here. Yes, action.
I was at GitHub Universe and the guy responsible was talking and he said that he found out because his 12-year-old kid asked him why he couldn't play Minecraft anymore.
Yeah.
That's
Like every plug.
Yeah. You're talking about the left panel?
the Log4Shell.
Or Log4Shell, okay. Yep. Yeah, that was the Equifax Act was Log4Shell, right? These are all like big name companies that are relying on open source. XCUtils was a fun one. How many people know what XCUtils is? One person? Yeah, again, two? Yeah. So
That's a long name.
this was a really cool attack for an outsider who was watching this, but this is another one we're talking about. So, Jason, I do want to point out that these slides were submitted 3 weeks ago. So, yes, we talked about this last night, but the slides were written long before that. So, XCUtils, this is a compression library that is shipped with every version of Linux. It has been for decades. I think it was 2020, an attacker made their first commit, slowly built up trust. Eventually, the maintainer of XCUtils, one person, got burnt out, handed off, transitioned that over to somebody who's going to maintain it, somebody who'd been in the code base for 4 years at that point. That person started slowly continued to develop normal software and then slowly started injecting malicious things into it. A Microsoft security researcher found this because CPU cycles, it was like 3% more CPU cycles. And he was so obsessed with the performance of the library that he dug in to figure it out and found the malware. Like, only engineers can have a brain that works like that, right? But you know, these things happen, right? So we just have to think about open source a little bit differently. So what are some of the open source things that are in scope? I just put a list up here. How many of you are using any of these things in your stack today, right? If I don't see 100% hands up, I'm not going to, somebody's a liar if you're not using at least one of these things, right? Now, the point is not that every SIM rule, for example, is open source. The point is that if you are pulling things off of Stack Overflow, guess what? That's open source. GitHub, if you do. Whether it's a gist or an NPM package or a pip library or whatever, right? These things are all open source software. And we need to think about them as we're going around. So the first risk of from the open source world is thinking that this only applies to developers. Right? This is stuff that you are using on a daily basis anyhow. Right? If you're pulling PowerShell scripts off of Stack Overflow, that's open source. You still need to think about the source of that and whether it actually is going to solve your problem. Hopefully nobody in here has just copied something out of Stack Overflow and pasted it into a PowerShell prompt and said, go. You've at least read it first and thought about what it's going to do and what that might happen, or what might happen. All right, so the way to think about this is if it runs in the client environment, if it touches client data, if it affects availability, or if it becomes part of your service delivery, that open source is now in scope. It's something that you need to think about the risk for. All right? So just some thought exercises for you. We'll come back to these a little bit later, but just some thought exercises like which of these things would you review most carefully? And again, I'm going to plant the seed here, and we'll come back to these questions a little bit. I want to talk about the risk review framework, the questions that you should be answering on. This is where my friend ChatGPT was very helpful to me. Thank you. What does it touch and how bad is it if it breaks? As you're thinking about the open source, thinking about the scope and the magnitude of the problem, if something goes wrong, is the way you're going to understand how deeply you need to go when you're evaluating the risk. So think about the data access. Does it require admin privileges, right? Ashley loves it when I pick on her, so I'm going to pick on Ashley for a second here. This is not me. I'm not me. All right. CyberDrake, SIP. What does SIP do?
Well, it does multi-tenant Microsoft 365 management.
Yeah. Do you need to have admin rights for SIP to be able to configure your Microsoft tenant?
Admin rights in what?
In your Microsoft tenant,
You need to, in order to set it up, you need to do it with a GA account, yes.
Yeah. So everybody who's using SIP is doing thorough analysis that the SIP team, who is wonderful by the way, is doing everything they say they're going to do with their open source tools to manage their Microsoft tenant? Yes? Nodding heads, please. there's very smart developers. It's all open source. There's really cool stuff that Zip does. This is a perfect example of like, this is something that requires at least some level of admin or escalated privileges to be able to configure it correctly in the first place, right? And so you need to be thinking about the risk around that pretty intensely, at least for that initial setup. Now, it's going to help you manage the drift, and it's doing a lot of good for you, right? So you want to have tools like that in your environment that are helping you get things configured correctly and try to get things the right way, but you also need to evaluate the risk. What about network exposure? OpenAI likes to talk about how their models have escaped their sandboxing, right? Again, I'm a little bit of a skeptic, so I think there's probably some marketing tech that's going on in there, but the reality is, thinking about the network exposure and how things where it can go and how bad it can escalate horizontally across your network, right? What can it do? Are you using this in production, or is this in your home lab? Right? If you're using it in your home lab, maybe you actually want to break something pretty risky and so you can test it out, right? And then what's the client impact if it fails? How many of you love it when your clients call you and say, things don't work, right? The cartoon, why do I even pay you when everything's going well, and why do I even pay you when something's broken? So you want to make sure that things are up and working. All right. Next question is, who maintains it, and is it actually alive? Those zombie tools that are out there, right? Again, if it's one person maintaining XCUtils, for example, or one person maintaining LeftPad, thinking about it and understanding who's maintaining it, how it's being maintained, how frequently it's being updated, when there's a security incident that's reported on it, how quickly is that patched and going out, right? These things are all areas that you need to be looking at when you're evaluating whether a product or a project is still alive and useful. Again, the PowerShell scripts that you're getting off the Stack Overflow, oftentimes wonderful things. But if it hasn't been updated, or there aren't any edits on that thread for 10 years, maybe it's not the most fresh content that you want to be looking at anymore, right? So again, thinking about the age of the answer is really important. How do they handle security? How many of you have looked at open source repositories on GitHub before? Surprising number, that's good. How many of you have looked for a security.md file within that repo? Almost as many hands, great. Again, the more mature open source projects are going to have some sort of security.md file. They're going to let you know how to report a bug that is security related. There's going to be kind of the equivalent of a responsible disclosure process that they want to have in place, because if you post publicly on their GitHub issues, hey, do you have a security incident? Now all of a sudden you might have given an attacker the keys to the kingdom, right? You want to be able to have that conversation, and you want to be able to do it in a way that is effective so you can actually get that security issue fixed in a responsible way. But again, just looking at how quickly are they patching their dependencies, right? Do they have Dependabot turned on? Dependabot's a great free tool that comes along with GitHub. Are they using Dependabot to actually manage their package, their downstream dependencies, and keep those up to date and alert for security issues? There are plenty of other tools that are out there. Socket.dev is a great one that scans the repository and scans all the dependencies and the transitive dependencies to help figure out and give scores around it. So look at those tools. It's a great way, and how those are incorporated into the open source repositories. What are the dependencies in the supply chain risks, right? So again, it's that dependency management. Are they actually updating all of their dependencies on a regular basis and thinking about what those downstream ramifications are? Are they minimizing the number of dependencies that they have, right? It's really easy, Jason loves to pick on JavaScript developers. I understand why. JavaScript developers are really, really lazy. Ruby developers, PHP developers, there's a lot of really lazy developers out there that's like, oh, why would I write this all over again? A package already exists, so I'm going to just incorporate that. And next thing you know, you have a LeftPad that's 11 lines of code that all it does is add extra space on the left side of the number, right? And it becomes a linchpin of the unit. Right, so thinking about what the dependencies are, why they are there, understanding and even suggesting ways to remove things, right? Axios is a good example. Axios, I don't know, five years ago, there was not a native library in JavaScript to do HTTP calls. And so Axios existed to make it easy for developers to just put a wrapper around it and get some good syntactic sugar to make those HTTP calls a lot easier, right? Node 22, I think, is when Node Fetch was introduced, which is a native library that is almost a feature parity with Axios. There's really no need for Axios anymore. And so are these open source tools starting to look for ways to migrate legacy dependencies out of their environment, right? If I no longer need Axios to make an HTTP request, why have it in my environment at all? Let me go back to the native stuff that is going to be a little bit safer because it's going to be part of the node, the core node stuff, right? And I'm picking on JavaScript a lot, but this is true for all the package managers, all the languages, Python, C++, C#, Java, all these tools, all these languages have their own package manager, and they all have a lot of the same problems as far as, oh, it's easy, it already exists, why reinvent the wheel? And then the last piece is how will we monitor it and own it after approval? Right, so now I've approved it, but I need to keep an eye on it, right? I need to manage my own dependencies. And so again, things like depend-abide, socket.dev, OWASP has some great tools to track your SBOMs. Can you actually monitor and understand what the risks are that are from those transitive dependencies that are in your system along the way? You have all the vulnerability management tools for your commercial software. A lot of those will also catch some of the open source things if they know about them. Giving a little bit deeper visibility into those open source risks and using tools that are designed for that is a great way of just, again, making sure that you are keeping yourself safe and your clients safe as things go. All right, so the decision model here is essentially 4 possible outcomes. You can approve it. So when the project is maintained, the risk is understood, access is limited, monitoring is in place, you understand exactly what you're doing, you're going to approve this tool for use. You're going to say, yes, this is a trusted tool, and I know that I can keep it, myself and my clients safe. You might approve with guardrails. You might say, you know what, this tool is really useful. There is some elevated risk associated with it. So I'm going to run it isolated, or I'm going to limit permissions, I'm going to restrict the internet, like looking for those guardrails to make sure that, again, you are keeping yourself safe and minimizing the risk associated with it. Because at the end of the day, your risk is also your client's risk, right? If you get popped, all your clients are having a bad day also. So you want to keep yourself and everybody else safe. You might have a pilot or sandbox only. And so again, this is in your home lab or internally where you're going to use stuff to really test it and watch and see what it's doing. Maybe you're putting on Wireshark and watching for network traffic because there's things that you're worried about. Maybe you just want to use it for internal use only, and it's really just an opportunity for you to kind of test things out, test the waters. And then you might have reject or replace. So if you find an abandoned project, again, I'll pick on Axios here, not least of which because they were subject of a supply chain attack earlier this year, but also because there's really no need to have that anymore, right? And so looking at those tools, if they are abandoned or if they're no longer necessary in your stack, if the source is unclear, one of the cool things that socket.dev does as its monitoring your tools is it will tell you when the person who pushed to the repository has changed. And so you can look for a new maintainer to be pushing code and say, oh, hang on a second, I want to actually understand what's going on there. Right? So and a lot of the software component analysis tools are doing more sophisticated things like that today to give you a little bit better visibility of that risk. And so again, this is where you might say, you know what, I'm going to reject this tool. I might go look for something else to replace it with. All right, so not every open source thing deserves the same level of review. I gave you the food for thought earlier with the scenarios to think about. This is the interactive part. So how are you going to think about a self-hosted documentation tool, has limited access, regular releases, and a security policy?
Is it storing passwords?
Good question. Would you like to store passwords?
They will get in there.
Well, I mean, I know it's what
Yeah,
you're talking about.
the reality is if it's documentation, there's a very good chance that somebody at your organization, maybe it's your techs, maybe it's your admin, somebody is going to accidentally put credentials into it, right? Intentionally or otherwise, right? It's how do I make my life easier? Why put it in my password manager when I can just stick it in the documentation so it's easy to find, right? So how are you thinking about this risk? Anybody want to volunteer?
Isolate as much as I can.
Yeah.
Lock it down. Cloudflare tunnels, no ingress, egress.
That's the default answer, though.
Yeah, that is the default answer. Anybody else? Anybody who's not at a table with the Cybertray or Slagle draft? No volunteers.
What is the question again? Like, what is the exact?
So what are you thinking about, like, when you look at a tool like this, maybe what decision would you make for a tool like this, or what question would you be asking to make a decision whether you approve with guardrails, sandbox, or reject? So one of the questions was, are passwords being stored in?
History of the documentation tool?
Yeah, okay.
Where and how it's being hosted?
Where and how it's being hosted. What are some things that might be higher risk or lower risk for you about where and how it's being hosted?
Well, if we have any internal tools that we're hosting, they're usually within a Docker container on our data center.
Yeah.
So that's how most of our high-risk stuff, anything that touches any internal information is going to be stored that way.
Yeah, so in this case, we're going to self-host it, so you put it in a Docker container in your environment. And then what are you doing to kind of sandbox that and make sure that it's not able to get out to other stuff?
Kind of similar stuff, making sure like VPN tunnels are being used, that, that making sure that people have their own accounts as well, making sure that it's not just an admin privilege, that everyone has access to any information and any policy that they can get their hands on, making sure that there's actual user control based tools as well implemented.
Okay, so tunnels, VPN tunnels, or Cloudflare tunnels, like that's a suggestion. So I love that. I love the named accounts, right? Shared accounts are a good way to have a bad day eventually. Right?
People
Cool.
in accounting shouldn't be touching like HR stuff.
Yep. Isolating access so you have the right people using it. Yep. Love it. So what are we thinking? Are we going to approve this one? Approve with guardrails? How are we thinking about this one? Dustin says approve.
With guardrails.
With guardrails. Guardrails?
Do you approve
Okay.
anything without guardrails?
What's that?
Do you approve anything without guardrails?
Depends on how you're setting it up. And if it's not a documentation tool, maybe there's Chrome. Do you have guardrails around Chrome?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank God.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah. This is it. I'm glad you do. Yes. No, I'm glad you do. The answer from too many people is no, right? They just unlimited access for their users can download Chrome and install and use it, right? So, all right, self-hosted configuration tool with right access to your MS admin console, bi-weekly releases, security policy, active community. May or may not sound like somebody in this room.
Can Kelvin push to the GitHub?
Can Calvin Taylor push the GitHub? The answer is only if you want to have a bad day.
I would ask, where's that key vault being stored?
Yeah.
Okay, where's the key vault being stored?
Self-hosted is in their own Azure, so it's cool. Right?
Yeah, so in this case, self-hosted is in their own Azure tenant. So is it using their key vault? Is the key vault being stored in their same Azure tenant?
Yeah, like
Right.
where, like, is it all in your own?
Yeah.
Role-based access, MFA, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so this one has maybe more guardrails than the first one.
If this is the tool we think it is, it's trickier than some other tools to guardrail because of the way it's architected.
About a random PowerShell script you find on that requires global admin from a personal GitHub repo.
If it has a security.md file.
As long as it has a security.md file, perfect. Yep. All right. That's good. Yeah.
How recently has it been updated?
This was posted just this morning.
Yeah, which Stack Overflow is it?
Yeah, so it's very recent, right?
What does it do?
I picked a PowerShell.
So what does it do is a great question to ask,
But they
right?
encourage you to make it a private repo.
Oh, yeah, and Star.
Yeah, start up making a private repo. Those are good indicators that this is a very secure project, right? All right. Popular WordPress plugin has 500,000 installs.
Yes, it's WordPress.
Yeah. Reject because it's WordPress. Yes. Nobody in here has a WordPress website, right?
Sorry.
I mean, the reality is, if you don't have a WordPress website, at least one of your customers has a WordPress website, right? And so thinking about plugins for your WordPress and how quickly they're being updated, whether they're being patched, Fun fact.
Not a lot of installs. For
Fun fact: if you have disabled a plugin in WordPress, you are still vulnerable to any issues that are involved in that. Right. So disabling it is not enough. If you are done with the plugin, uninstall. All right. Fun fact. Yeah. If there are unresolved security issues, this is definitely in that reject category, right? You want to make sure that you're getting these things out of your system. If they're maintaining it, I have strong feelings about PHP and about WordPress. Not all of them are safe for public consumption. I will just leave
Same
that.
feelings about JavaScript.
What's that?
I think the same feelings about JavaScript.
Yeah. We had this conversation last night also. All right. So let's talk about some sample decision language. Prove with guardrails, right? This is the way you're going to talk about this with your clients, especially when your client says, hey, I really want this tool. Or when your tech comes to you and says, hey, I really want this tool. Actually, even worse is when the owner comes to the tech and says, hey, I heard about this great tool at a conference, please go install this for me. And the tech goes and looks at it, because all techs are being very diligent, right? Are not just doing what their owner tells them to do, right? Right? Please?
Yes.
But some sample language you can use either with your customers or your boss to talk about how you're going to approve something with guardrails and what those guardrails should look like and why you're approving with guardrails and not just saying, yes, of course you can go do this. And then likewise with the reject replace language. And again, all these slides are available, so that's all coming at the end here. All right, so let's talk about some takeaways. Top 5 questions you need to ask. What does it do? What does it touch? What happens if it breaks? How are you dealing with it? Who maintains it? Is it actually alive? Somebody touching this on a regular basis, right? We have some amazing open source developers in this room who are doing some very cool things. They are actively maintaining it. They have an active Discord, right? There's a lot of really good things that are happening. And so you know if there's a problem, you're going to hear about it very quickly. And you know if you find a problem, you know who to report to. So answering that second question is very, very important. How are they handling security? Number 3, right? What are they doing when there's a security incident? How are they allowing you to report things? What are the dependencies? What are the supply chain risks? Are you looking at those transitive dependencies? Are you looking at the software bill of materials? The cool thing about open source, if it's on GitHub, there is a software bill of materials available to you. You can go, you have to dig a little bit, but it's available on every GitHub repo to find the bill of materials. And so go look at that, understand what it does, throw it into some of those tools that, again, OWASP has some good ones. There's a lot of good ways to read the SBDX file format is not terribly end user friendly, but if you put it into a machine, like a machine parsing of it is really good to be able to go out and check out what's in there. And then how are you going to monitor it after, and who's going to own it after it's been approved? One of the maxims for like really all small businesses, an ownership problem exists when there are too few owners, meaning less than one owner. You have too few owners, you have an ownership problem. And you have too many owners, meaning more than one owner. You have too many owners, you got an ownership problem. Right? Because as soon as there's 0 owners, nobody's taking responsibility for it. As soon as there's 2 owners, it's, oh, I thought you were doing it. Right? You got that Spider-Man meme. Right? So making sure that you have clear ownership internally for who's going to own that decision. Yes?
How would you have this differ for proprietary software? It seems like a good list for.
Yeah, it
Remove OSS. Just put
yes.
anything.
But
Yes.
the answer to number 3 is probably bad in that case.
Yeah, so it really does not change.
How do you even get trust in the first place if it's closed?
So Ashley's question was, how do you even trust it at all if it's closed and you have no visibility to the source code? Honestly, the difference between commercial software and open source software for these questions is very minimal, right? Still want to understand what the scope is. So question 1 does not change at all. Who maintains it? Is it actually alive? Well, you're going to know if there's a real company. So you know who maintains it. So the who maintains it is very easily answered. Is it actually alive? Right? Was it just acquired? Maybe alive for a little bit longer. Has it been a long time since it was acquired? You better see some real updates coming out of it still, right? I think we've all seen that where, especially in this space, where a company acquires a competitor or another tool, and then they collect revenue, but they don't ever put any more dollars into development, right? So looking at that release cycle and looking at the release notes and checking that out. So that one's a little bit easier to look at though for the corporate or commercial side of things. You're not going to have a security.md file from your commercial vendor, but you will have some sort of security page that talks about how to report an incident. Do they have a bug bounty program? Are they doing pen testing? Now, you're going to have an ability to hopefully be asking for SOC 2 or ISO or some sort of report. I know I have strong feelings about that. Also, we can talk about that afterwards for anybody who wants to hear my thoughts about SOC 2. But there are reasons why that could be valid and why you can still get some valuable information out of that. Wayne, there's GTIA has something too, right?
Cybersecurity trust mark?
Cybersecurity trust mark, yes, right. So, looking at that from that, thinking about how you're going to manage it, like again, that physical security is maybe a little bit different in the way you ask that question from a vendor. Because again, you can do better questionnaires and ask them a lot more detailed questions. Dependencies and supply chain risks. In this case, a lot of it is going to be asking them to provide an SBOM to you if you're going to be installing it on your infrastructure. If it's a SaaS product, that SBOM is going to be out of date the second they give it to you. So it's maybe a little bit less relevant. But then it's in the monitoring and owning it after approval. Hopefully the vendor has a status page or something, some way for you to be able to monitor it. Because to Jason's point, some vendors are much better about alerting their customers and others are less good about alerting their customers, and we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, but on the flip side, not every vendor is as large to do all
Correct.
of this.
Yep.
So I'm kind of looking at it from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely, right? There's certainly the, if it's a one-man shop, what happens if the one man wins the lottery? Because if boss goes on vacation, right? So understanding and thinking about what that looks like and what guardrails you're going to put into place, and this is where contractual protections might make a little more sense for you also from the commercial side of things. All right, take-home resources, the slides. If you don't want to scan QR codes because you're security-minded, blacksmithinfosec.com/ChannelCon has all the resources. There's slides for the session. There's the checklist that we talked about. There are some tools that I like to use to monitor risk in open source projects. There's some further reading. I encourage you, if you are not already following the Open Source Security Podcast and are curious about open source, the Open Source Security Podcast is a great place to get more information. What other questions do people have? I've got 8 minutes left. Yes. The man with no opinions.
How do we handle SBOM for vendor packages? So VP8 comes to mind, right? So there was a vulnerability in libVPX, which is the VP8 video player from Google, but no one links that as a dynamic library. It's pulled into the source tree of pretty much every single project that uses it, like FMFPEG, Chrome, right? So the SBOM that GitHub publishes won't have it. So how do we handle that as an industry?
It should still have it, but
It's not a dependency.
is it a runtime dependency?
It's pulled into their source tree.
Oh,
It's vendor.
gotcha. It's pulled into the source tree. Okay.
The same thing you get with Log4j in most cases too, right? Like it's pulled
Yes.
into the source tree. It's not a third-party dependency.
Well, so Log4j would be an import, so that is going to be pulled into the. It's not going to be pulled into the source tree, right?
True. I guess you're right in that case.
So if the package is being
In most
imported,
cases.
in most cases the package can be imported. If the code is being just copied in and it's part of the source tree, then you don't have that visibility. You just have. This is where coming back to, do you trust the vendor and are they doing the right things? There is a possibility in that case that there's some sort of violation of the license for that. Yeah.
Do you prefer the I nearly exist or the I wake up and there's another supply chain attack?
Do I prefer the I barely exist or the I wake up and there's another supply chain meme? There. The I wake up and there's another supply chain attack is a little close to home. I feel that. I feel seen every time that happens. And so that probably is the one I resonate with a little bit more. Anybody else?
Are you aware there's a present supply chain attack in NPM as of today?
I am not aware.
That's true.
Yeah.
Is the solution just to pin every single version of everything?
That has its own problems.
That has pinning your versions has problems.
Pinning is great.
Using a lock file has problems.
Yeah.
NPM, actually, one of the good things that NPM did do just last week is they released, they are now scanning all packages before they are available on NPM. It's pip doesn't do this, Ruby Gems doesn't do this, right? So it's one thing that NPM is finally doing to secure things. It didn't help today. Yeah.
Can they make commits of MFA?
What's that? So they are conditionally requiring MFA as of last week.
Yeah, correct. No, they require it now. I think I've gotten like 70,000 emails about it.
Okay. Is it required for everyone? I think it's only
August 1st. It might have been.
Yeah, I thought it was only required if you are doing any sort of if you're publishing and you have any sort of downstream dependent, like transient dependency that gets pulled in at install time, and they are. Yeah, so there's some cool stuff that they're doing, but again, it's I don't think far enough, and certainly not fast enough. Right? It's like too little, too late in a lot of cases. But yes, there's some people are starting to think about this at the package manager level, but every package manager is maintained quite differently, and then JavaScript has its own set of problems where there's NPM, and then people got mad at NPM, so they created yarn, and then yeah, so that like, if you got multiple different package managers, it's fun.
So you said, okay, pinning has some usefulness on it, but then go back to, you said on XV, it was like 3 years in the waiting. So if you are pinning, what's a realistic time frame to wait from a safety standpoint?
Yeah, so XC was an interesting one because so the attacker got into the system 3 or 4 years before the first exploit or before the first malicious code was put into place, and then I forgot what I'm going to get the version numbers wrong. It was like February of 2024 was when the first malicious version was published. Unfortunately, that was only going to new Linux distributions that hadn't been shipped yet, and so it was caught before it got out into the wild. But the time window is shrinking between Axios. It was like popped at I think it was like 1 a.m. Pacific time, and by 1:10 it was identified that there was a problem, and like 4 hours later the world was waking up to a really bad day. Because even stopping it 20 minutes later, libraries that are that popular are getting downloaded so frequently, and so you definitely want to be pinning it for at least a few days. Yeah.
A lot of what we talked about was like leaf-based, right? Like where it's like packages or whatever that are part of projects, and that is a very different world and a scarier world than in a lot of ways than like SaaS projects. And like I don't know if you talked about it, but like the unexamined risk piece keeps coming back to me, and like what cycle steps, like how do we sleep knowing that this is happening and we're seeing it in open source, recognizing that is happening everywhere else as well, and we just don't have any idea and nobody knows how to like properly disclose anything.
There's a lot to unpack there. So let me try to paraphrase and correct me if I don't paraphrase it correctly. We talked a lot about the leaf problem where it's at the edge for an individual package, but what about the SaaS vendor who is relying on that package, and how are you getting sleep at night knowing that your vendors are using open source tools that you may not know about? I mean, how do you sleep at night with knowing that your RMM could get popped over the weekend?
It's more of an esoteric question, but it's like really like how do we solve that? How do we split the problem apart?
So I have a take. You can look at the front end code because you have access to the front end code, and if the front end code is an ancient versions of 17 things and pulling in a 4-year-old copy of jQuery, then assume the back end code is just as bad.
Yes.
Who's gonna make that product? Somebody.
Make the product that has 17-year-old versions of software, or make the software that checks for 17-year-old versions of
Make
software.
a product that just drills into the DOM of every software and just like tells you from the front end where they're
Built with.
Built with it already exists. There's a Chrome plugin called Built With that will tell you exactly what's on a page, and will
So would that fix the thing you were talking about earlier where they pulled the code in? Or identify it rather?
Now, vendor code is an unsolved problem with SBOM. That's the example I bring, for example.
Yeah,
it's the solution to all the problems.
Yeah, it doesn't solve the problem. The problem that Jason was articulating is if I copy the code out of a GitHub repo and paste it into my source code repository, then there's no dependency for somebody to monitor, right? And there's no way for me to track, as a vendor even, or a software developer, if I copied and pasted that code and there's a vulnerability, now I no longer know whether, right? So it creates a whole lot of risk for the vendor.
Does that responsibility then fall onto the GitHub or the Bitbucket or whatever that is hosting that to like find those types of situations?
How though?
Well, they can use AI to scan code. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you could look for
So-
violations
No,
and say this is
no,
part of
no,
the
let's have the we'll have the insurance companies manage to that
Yeah.
SBOM
So
issue, right?
the short answer is, if you are willing to pay for it, GitHub is already doing some level of code quality analysis using AI. And for open source repositories, I think their code quality is free. For
Dependabot does like its thing. I don't know what else.
Dependabot is looking at source code, or software composition analysis. So it's looking at the packages. Code quality is looking at the quality of the code and is looking for vulnerabilities that might exist and is using AI to do that. I will tell you that there are a lot of vendors who don't take security as seriously as they should and say, oh, you're going to charge me an extra $20 a month or $40 a month or $80 a month per developer for these tools. No, that's not a cost I'm willing to accept. And so they don't do those things. And so yes, those tools do exist. They should be used. They probably aren't.
All right, give Jared a round of applause, please.
Get misty, yeah, we're bringing the heat. Cyber strong compliance on repeat. Get misty, let's secure your fate with Blacksmith InfoSec. Don't hesitate.